Okay, so it's so nice to meet you guys. Yeah, we do have quite a range of people here. So before I talk about my job, actually, I want to do a quick introduction just to talk a little bit about myself so you guys can kind of know who I am as a person. Instead of bullet points, though, I wanted to go through pictures because I found that pictures can sometimes be a little more engaging, especially since you guys have been in classes all week already. So we'll start from the left all the way to the right. You guys see that picture with the three little girls and the chi paos doing the little kung fu pose? That's me and my sisters. So I'm the middle child. I have one older sister and one younger sister. And I actually was born in New Jersey, but I grew up in China because my parents were missionaries there. So that's kind of what like the whole kung fu pose. I think we maybe just watched a kung fu movie. And since then, I've actually gone to boarding school in Taiwan. I studied for college in Baylor University, all the way in Waco, Texas. Then I studied abroad in Paris for 1 year. And then I went all the way back to Texas to finish out. And now I'm working in Houston in business sales. Now, flash forward a lot of years, you can see my family in the middle screen. That's my family today. This was actually taken about 2 months ago at my proposal. So from your guys is on the left, that's my fiance. His name is James. And then down a little more is my older sister. She's in the middle in the first picture with her baby and her husband on the very left. And then you see my mom, my dad on the right, and then my youngest sister on the very right. So we're actually all back in Houston now. It's a long story because at one point we were all over the world. One of us was in China, someone was in New York, someone was in Texas, but now we're all in Houston. So that's a huge blessing. I have a little dog. Her name is Nina. She's in the middle photo, and then she's also on the right with that tiny little backpack. If you guys can see it. She's my little baby. She was actually part of our proposal as well. And then outside of work, I like to do things like working out, traveling, but I also really love to bake. So do you guys see those cakes at the bottom? Those are ones that I made. There's a carrot cake, and then there's a strawberry cake. And carrot cake is my absolute specialty. So if any of you students or any of you guys are ever in Houston, just say, hey, Alina, I'm here and I want some carrot cake, and I got you. All right, so that's a brief introduction. And then next, I kind of want to, oops. Why is this not working? Give me 1 second, please. I want to share a little bit about my story, but I'm going to share it through the form of a SWOT. Can you guys put in the chat, has anyone here heard of SWOT before? Any of you guys ever do this with your other speakers? Put like a Y if you've heard of SWOT.
Yeah, I covered that in my early session. So everyone was asked to do a SWOT.
Everyone should know. Okay, good. All right, so this is what Elaine also taught me to do during our mentoring sessions. So this is something I'll go over, but I want to share my story through it as well. So starting from the left, my strengths, I'll run through them quickly. Communication, which means that, I love any sort of communication, if that's writing, reading, presenting things. So I'm here, or doing sales. So that works with my personality as well. But that actually also played out, when I was in college, I really did a little bit of journalism, joined that a lot. And then I also studied corporate communication in college, meaning that it was literally my major to study communication. So I studied a lot of articles, I did a lot of research, but I also did a lot of public speaking and communication as well. Arranger means that I can like to be easily adaptable while remaining organized. Oh, before I get into this though, quick point. So the way that I found these strengths, I actually used this personality test called Gallup Strengths Finder. I can link it to you guys later, but I actually really suggest that for finding your strengths. It gives you 5 strengths out of 35. So you guys can actually take that test in school or when you start working. It'll help you kind of think about what you're really, really good at and what you can kind of work on. So that's where I got these different 5 strengths. So one of them was arranger, meaning that I like to be easily adaptable while remaining organized. This was really helpful for when I was moving from, New Jersey to China, all the way jumping to boarding school for high school, meaning that I was living all by myself from high school and on at a dormitory, and I had to stay organized and through school. And then I went to America for the first time, like living by myself in Texas, and I had to learn a whole new school system there, a whole different culture. I went from living in Asia to living in Texas, which is very different. And then for my second year of college, I studied abroad in Paris. So that's all the way to another continent in France. And then I actually had to learn a new language while I was there. So now that you think about it, I went from China, Asia to America to France in the span of 3 years. in those 3 years, I was still studying, had to learn how to, take care of school and be organized. So that helped a lot. Activator, meaning that I like to turn thoughts into action. Learner, meaning that I like to continuously improve. And I'm going to stop right there really fast and say that even though maybe you guys didn't take the Strengths Finder, I'm sure all of you guys are learners, which is why you're here today, right? It's not because your parents made you. You guys are here because you want to learn about different jobs, right? But so learner essentially means that I do like to look at different information and learn from different people. And this didn't always come naturally from me. When I was younger, you could be afraid of, asking people questions in class or learning how to, speak up, but that's something that was learned over time. If you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? So that also helps with having mentors. When I was younger, I was, like I said, a little bit afraid to ask people questions, but as I grew up, started asking more questions, I realized that mentors are just people that have gone a couple steps ahead of you and are able to give you a lot of wisdom and a lot of learning that they can pass down and help you make better decisions where you are at now. So that's people like Elaine or people like teachers that eventually had that helped me a lot in my path going forward. So I definitely recommend for you guys as well, where you guys are at, to think about, hey, is there someone that can mentor me or someone that I can learn from? Last one is analytical. Meaning that I really like to think about, the cause and effect of things. Instead of just seeing something for the way it is, I like to think about why is it that way, and then go a little bit deeper. Now, moving to my weaknesses is when the story gets actually interesting. You can kind of see on the right, and a lot of times the weaknesses can sometimes be strengths that are to the extreme or left unchecked. So for me, my weaknesses, one of them is that let's see, the second one, big picture thinking overshadows logistical details. If you'll see on the left, it says one of my strengths is big picture thinker. So how does that really work? So because I'm such a big picture thinker, I like to think about the big picture. I like to think about why. My weakness, one of them, is that sometimes because I'm so much in the big picture, I tend to forget about the little logistical details, like can end up making me late to some things once in a while, or maybe sometimes I just might have to miss a detail that I'll have to go back and double check. So that kind of goes hand in hand. The other one is because I can be very analytical or always very much about going into action, I can have a tendency to worry. So as you guys know, as I mentioned, I grew up all over the place and all over the world. But I had a lot of anxiety growing up, actually. Even though I was born in a Christian home, my dad is a pastor. For me, a lot of times when I was a kid, I just thought, that's their faith, that's my parents' thing. But it was only until high school that I really started thinking about, what do I believe in? Up until then, though, I had a lot of worry as a person going into life. I was always worried about, social things or school. And for you guys as well, I'm sure there's a lot of things to worry about. You guys were going through COVID for school for a couple of months, and all the social media, a lot of anxiety inducing things. So I relate to that. But for me, when I was in sophomore year in high school, that's when I decided I really want to, for my own, actually accept Christ. And that was when a lot of things changed for me. It was then that slowly I started learning more what it means to trust God. And that's not just, saying, hey, God, I'm just going to leave everything up to you. But that's really just leaving the results in God's hands and doing the best myself while I can with what I can do. And that was kind of how I started growing my relationship with God. The threats that can come with this is that because I can sometimes lack empathy or be critical, I may not be as safe as a person to those that are close to me, or because I can miss out on the details, I will have to waste time doubling back for the details and double checking things. And then again, the threats were that I would not trust God when I would have worry, and I would put a lot of my worth in my own actions. But again, these are things that I had to learn as I was growing my relationship with God, that what it means to trust God is not just to say, hey, again, I don't worry about, I don't think about it, but it means that I do what I can in the moment. I pray about it and I leave the rest to God. Now back to the opportunities with the strengths. Nowadays, the ways that I use my strengths is that I can actually proactively foster community in my church, help plan events and unite people. At jobs, because I can have the range of strength, I can organize and simplify my work process. And with my friends and family, I can be very intentional with my relationships and my quality time. All right, next slide. Okay, So these are my 5 Ps. For me, starting from the very bottom, let me move this aside. My purpose is to experience God, and to love God and to love people. Meaning that for me, what I believe my purpose in life is to really, I really just want to experience the love that God has, that when I first experienced him in high school, to just have that the rest of my life and to be able to learn more about him and what that means to love him. The principles that I live by, one of them is faithful excellence in the big and small. So, not just being very faithful in the big projects at work or the big things, but also in the little things, like, am I putting away the dishes, or am I being kind to, my sisters, thinking about being faithful in those things as well, because it's those little things that then add up to the big decisions. Also learning how to seek God in all things. That's another principle that I really strongly stand by. Doesn't mean that it's not that we just have God on Sunday and then the rest of the week we do whatever. It really means that through Monday through Friday, what does it mean to be a true follower of God? And that also applies in my work, in my friendships, and in basically every single aspect. To really think, am I being pleasing to God with the way that I'm talking to this person, or the way that I'm cooking, or the way that I'm interacting with my coworkers, really trying to bring God in my relationship into all those little things as well. Also to take it day at a time. As I mentioned, with my tendency to sometimes worry or have anxiety, take it a day at a time is really a principle that I've learned to live by, meaning that, every day will worry about itself. All you can do is focus on what you can do today, plan for the future, but know that, things will always change. Things may go wrong, but there are things out of your control. The things that are in your control, though, what can you do to have excellence in that right now? And then trust the rest to God. And then to also, of course, to be able to laugh at yourself. I think, life, again, it's going to go by with all these ups and downs, but sometimes you just need to know that not to take yourself too seriously, be intentional, be purposeful, but know that you can also laugh at yourself and have fun along the way. I think that's really important too. So let's do the next P, my passion. So things that I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about church and discipleship. So not just, going to church, sitting in the pews on Sunday and then going home, but really the relationships that happen there, and being able to disciple others and help others in their relationship with God, and also be discipled by people as well and grow in my relationship. So that's kind of similar with the mentorship, but also just in a church setting, where we are able to learn from those who have gone ahead of us and also be able to help those behind us as well. Also passionate about communication, like I said. And then my dog and my family, definitely very passionate about them. Being able to have good relationships with them, love on them, and I think really take good care of those immediate relationships that I have right in front of me. Also very passionate about healthy, holistic living. That means that, not just taking care of myself in work or not just in school, but also caring about my physical health, spiritual health, mental health, and being very intentional with the way that I use my time, so that I'm also essentially holistically taking care of myself. Not leaving any place unchecked, and I think it's a way to treat my body as a temple, but also be faithful with the way that I take care of myself too, so that I can also take care of others. Next P, the people, the way that I see people. Being very intentional with my relationships and time is something that then stems out of, loving God, loving people, then being very intentional with that. And then when I do love on people, I don't do it out of expectations in return. I don't bake cakes for someone saying, hey, does that mean you're going to bake a cake for me next week? No, nothing like that. It really is just giving as for God. You give to them and say, hey, I did this for God. I love God, so I love you. It's like my favorite analogy that I saw when I was in high school that someone taught me to was, think of ourselves like a straw. There's God and there's God's love, and then we are actually just a straw and everybody else is at the end. So we're not the ones that's responsible for giving all the love, and it's not coming from us. Really, it's coming from God, and he just goes through us, and then we can love on other people. So that was one of my favorite analogies, give us for God. And then third one is grow together. So right now, you guys are finding friends for all different kinds of reasons. For some people, it's because you like to game together. For some people, it's because you guys like the same toys, the same hobbies, the same, I don't know, whatever it is. But for me, one of the best friendships that I have, you guys can find, is ones that you guys can actually grow together. grow together in your character, things like you're learning in these cult sport classes. If you can have friends that you can talk about these things together, it's so much fun, and learn how to apply it together. These are some of the best friendships that you'll find, and especially grow spiritually together too. And then lastly, my performance. So where all of this pans out, in my performance would be, my career and the way that I work with my customers and my teammates, to experience God, to love people. That means that being faithful in the way that I do my work, the way that I do with my customers, the way I do with my teammates, not just going to work thinking, hey, I'm just going to do my work, focus on my thing, but remember, hey, how can I love on my teammates that are next to me? Maybe there's one of my teammates that was having a bad day or that was struggling. Instead of just focusing my own thing, how can I get outside of myself and actually help them as well and love on them too? Church service and volunteering. So that means that I also, like I said, falls right in with experience, God, love people. And I found that I grow the most often when I'm serving. And then of course, my one-on-one time with God, having that intentional time with him, to really be able to grow my relationship with him. So those are my 5 P's. All right, enough about me. Let's move on into what it is that I do for a living. So I'll just show you guys this very briefly. This is what I like to show new mentors. Might be a little bit much for you guys at this point, but it's kind of like a resume where I list out my core strengths, my education, my experience, my personality. When you guys get to this phase in life, you can definitely ask me. I'll be happy to help. But this is a great way to kind of list out who you are in a nutshell. I won't run through all of this. It's just kind of to give you guys an example of what it could look like. All right, so now to my job. This is why you guys are all actually here, right? I work in business sales. And when you first think about sales, I don't even know if I want to ask you guys what you think, because sometimes people don't have the best thought when they think about sales. At least I didn't. When I first thought about sales, I thought about the car salesman. The person who's in a car shop or in a store saying, hey, you got to buy this. And they're like shoving something in your face, like, hey, you got to buy this right now. And that's what I first thought of when I thought about sales. So when I first saw sales as a first career, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. So the first myth, they're all product pushers, not to be trusted. They're just going to shove something in your face. The second thought that I had is that sales is only for people that are super, super extroverted. You have to have like a personality where you can talk at 1,000,000 miles a minute. And if you're not like that, then don't even consider sales. The third myth that I had was that sales isn't respectable. Again, like maybe salespeople are just the people that, the annoying cold calls that you get, where they're trying to sell you something over the phone, or there's just, it's not necessarily the best job that you might want to have. So these are some thoughts that I had going into sales. And maybe some of you haven't even thought about sales before, but when you do think about sales, maybe this is what you're thinking about. And that's how it was for me anyways. So like I said, Elaine mentioned, she was actually my mentor. I met her in high school, but we really started talking in college, and she was the one that introduced me to sales at AT&T. That's where I work. And so through this, it was through some conversations with her and through my own experience that I actually learned none of these aren't actually true. For the first one, all salespeople are product pushers, not to be trusted. I actually do something called consultative selling. So I learned that the worst type of sales, what they teach us to not do on day one is to not be a product pusher. They tell us to actually listen to our customers in my type of sales. I'll often start with having meetings where you learn about the customer, you learn about what their business is doing. You ask them, what are your needs? Where are the gaps? And essentially you think of us salespeople as being a bridge between what the need is and the solution. So that's really what sales is. I'm not trying to push something on you that you don't need. I'm really just trying to bridge you to the thing that you do need. And if you don't need the product, then you're not a customer and it's not a big deal. It is what it is. And there can be good lawyers, there can be bad lawyers, there can be good doctors, there could be unethical doctors. And likewise, there can be good salespeople and unethical salespeople. And at the end of the day, it's not so much the specific profession that you choose. It's really how you go about your profession. You can choose to try to sell someone they don't need, or you can try to really listen to them and say, hey, is this something that you need? Is this something that can help you? Maybe I can sell them a higher price, but because of what I believe in, I've actually chose to give someone a lesser expensive product because I knew that would fit their needs better and their budget. And in the end, they were grateful to me because I was honest with them, and they came back and had a bigger sale for me. So these things really do happen. The second myth is that sales is only for the super extroverted people. I talked a little bit about my background, how I grew up with a little bit of anxiety or worry as a person. And that's because I actually used to be very, very shy. When I was in middle school, I think was it Ruth that said she likes literature. I was like that too. I was a big bookworm. I don't know if you're like that, Ruth, but when I was little, I just liked to sit in my room and read books. And I was like, nobody talk to me, And when we had like youth camps, I didn't even want to go hang out with the kids. I was like, Mom and Dad, I just want to stay in my room and read. So that was me. I was not very extroverted as a kid. But it was actually as I started growing, I read books about communication. I talked with mentors. I talked with my parents. I made a lot more friends. And eventually I learned how to be a lot better at communication. So now I consider myself what we call an ambivert. So halfway between an extrovert and an introvert. I'm kind of in the middle. I can be introverted and spend time on myself and be very happy baking cakes and reading books, playing with my dog. Or I can be extroverted and I love hanging out with friends as well. So it really depends on how you grow as a person. And we have all kinds of people in sales. Sometimes, though, they say introverted people can make great salespeople because they're sometimes better at listening. Let's be honest. They're better at hearing or observing people sometimes. And so maybe it makes them better at being able to relate with the introverted customers. So you don't always have to be a certain personality type for sales. The last one, sales and respectable. Well, that myth was debunked pretty quickly when I first started my job. Did you guys know that some of your most famous CEOs actually started out in sales? So he's a little bit older for y'all, but Warren Buffett, I'm sure you guys have heard of him. He started off in sales. I had other couple names. If you just Google CEOs that started off in sales, you see quite a few that actually started out in sales. And the reason why a lot of CEOs or a lot of people higher up start in sales is because when you're in sales, you learn all about the business. But you also really learn about not taking things personally because people say no all the time, but you also say yes, of course, but you get a lot of no's. You learn to have a much thicker skin, so you're not as easily offended by people. You're able to pick up things quickly and move quickly. So the skills that you develop when you take sales early on in your career, it actually helps you a lot with, people skills, being able to move quickly, being able to learn how to communicate, all at a very quick pace. And you often have to learn about products also really quickly and learn how to talk about them. So it's actually a really good place to start off in your career, especially if you're looking to move into any sort of management in the future. All right. Now, what do I actually do on a day-to-day? So here is what a day looks like at AT&T Fiber Sales. One thing we do many things throughout the week. One nice thing about sales they didn't tell me when I first started is for this particular type of sales, we actually get to choose our entire day ourselves. So every day I keep organized by having a schedule. But honestly, when I show up to work, my boss doesn't say, hey, this is what you're doing at 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 8 to 12. Actually, I have my own schedule and I tell my boss what my schedule is going to be for that month or for that week. And then she just trusts me with it. We used to have a lot of one-on-ones. We still do sometimes, but because I tend to be very proactive and tell my boss what to do, I'm like, hey, I'm working on this today, or I'm working on this week. She actually leaves me alone quite a bit and it's just there for me when I need help. So sales, you actually have a lot of flexibility. So if you're the type of person who's really good at organizing your own day, or you like having your own space and your own time and you're responsible about it, sales is actually a really great place to be. So for me, every month I have something what we call a quota. And that's basically a numerical number or a metric that we have to hit, which will show me if I'm doing well at my job. So every month I have to hit this. The next month it resets to 0, which is a little sad, but I basically have to hit that every month. And then as I hit that, that's basically how I'm doing well at my job. So instead of having something like a test where I get an A or B, I just have a number to hit, and that would be my A, B, C, D, sort of like that. So a day in my life. One thing I do a lot is email blasting. This is the most brainless part. Maybe I should have started with this one, but this is the easiest part of the job. Basically what it is just send out a bunch of emails to different customers, but we don't do it like spamming people or just sending it to anybody. I sell to business customers only. So we have actually what we call different databases that we have different customer emails that we prospect. So with that, there are people that, are signed onto our newsletters. So we're able to send them emails. And then we say, just if you're interested, just letting you know this product is available, or hey, may I have a meeting with you to talk about your business and what your needs may be. We actually do get quite a few responses from those people that are actually just in the market, or they're just curious to learn more what's out there. And then during those meetings, I sometimes bring in what we call my IT overlay. He's the really technical guy. And what we do is we really just try to learn more about their business. We're not there to push a product onto them. We're not there to say, hey, buy this, buy this, buy this. No, we're just there to learn about them and say, what are your needs and how can we maybe help you? The other thing that I do, some people kind of grimace when they see this word cold calling, because it's a little scary to call people on the phone because you can be scared of being hung up on, or maybe meet someone mean. It's like you pick up the phone, you have no idea who's going to be on the other end. But like I said, with sales, these are some of the really good skills you develop, which is how to make an impression quickly, learn how to connect with people quickly, and learn how to see what people's needs are quickly as well. So they typically will tell us to make this many calls a day, but again, it's not super strict in my particular role as long as you're hitting your number. And then sometimes we have blitzes where we have competitions with prizes. Ooh, so this is the fun part. Like maybe on Tuesday, they will have something called a blitz. Elaine knows what I'm talking about at AT&T. So they'll give us prizes if you win the most opportunities. You don't even have to have like necessarily sales that day, because sales can take longer to close, but maybe you get the most opportunities, the most calls, or some sort of metric that they have, and they can give you prizes. They once gave out AirPods. Sometimes they give out trips. Once the big prize for like a couple months long blitz was like a car, like they leased out someone a car. So like they give out some pretty nice prizes, especially at a big company. So even though I get my paycheck, sometimes I also get like little cash prizes too. It's a lot of fun. And then everyone gets really competitive and they just kind of gear up to do that day. Another part of my job is networking. Again, networking, sometimes when you hear that word, you're thinking, ooh, does that mean just, trying to talk to people because I want something from them? And I'm sure you guys have learned about this with Alina as well, but networking isn't really about that. Just trying to meet goals when you meet people. It's really about seeing if you can have a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not just saying, how can you help me, but how can I help you as well? So I work in business sales and I network with people that are like IT vendors, meaning they sell AT&T products, or they help different companies with their cybersecurity or their networking needs. Or I can network with AT&T technicians. I help these IT vendors and these technicians by answering all of their questions about our products. And we also have referral programs, meaning that if their customers, buy with us, then they can get some prizes as well, or some cash. So it's mutually beneficial. And we're able to help them out, and they're able to help us out by giving us different customers that might need AT&T products. And the last thing I do is I actually manage current customer accounts. So as mentioned, I don't work with regular day-to-day people. I work with businesses specifically. So because of that, the tier of customer support is a little bit higher. So I work with customers that after I sell to them, I actually help manage their account as well. So if they have questions about their bill or questions about their account, I can help them do that too. There's little things, of course, to do in between, but these are basically the big 4 things that I do on my day-to-day.
So perhaps we can pause and ask some questions. This is so fascinating. Yeah, what Alina is working on is very near and dear to my heart, because I started this fiber program. I led the program managed office to reach to 50 million units, so that we have fiber to all these businesses. So Alina is very proactive sales. So are there any questions from anyone? I saw one interesting part that you listen to podcasts. How can you explain and share more about that?
Listen to podcasts? Do you mean during the email blasting or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so during the email blasting, so because that can be a little bit less stimulating for your brain, because you're always just clicking the button. During that time, I actually like to learn more things. I might put on, like you said, a podcast. I might listen to that as I'm email blasting. Sometimes I put on some music that's motivating, but listening to things as well that help me learn and continue to improve myself as well while I'm doing my job.
Got it. So it's kind of keeping you entertained and energized while you're doing somewhat of a mechanical work that does not need you to use your brain. Matthew's asking, how do you choose who to cold call?
Ooh, that's a good question. So it does, we do have different prospecting tools. I can't give you all of our secrets, but we have different tools, of course, that we're able to learn about, businesses. It's based off of public information. So it's not like Big Brother spying or anything like that. It's all public information out there that they help us organize. And then we basically look for customers that are maybe new businesses in the area. So sometimes we look for new construction. You can be driving, or there's also, like I said, lists on the internet. There's these new constructions coming in and they're going to need internet, or they're going to need network. So I don't just sell internet. I also help them with their phones, with their cybersecurity, with their cameras, honestly, anything they need for their networking needs at that business. So we would then call them, say like, hey, are you coming in? And then are you starting your business? And then ask them questions. And then they might want to set up a meeting with us. Another example is I actually have a customer right now I'm working with. He's a property manager and he has like 6 units, but 3 of them are moving in and they just became fiber lit, meaning that we can get AT&T fiber there. So he was asking me to check on the addresses and I just gave him the green light, and in a little bit, he's going to connect me with the people that are about to move in, and then we can set them up with AT&T fiber. That's a good question though.
So in general, you want to look for those who have a need, and that we have a solution that would meet their need. So that's what's behind the different tools that can help you see, oh, these customers moving in, they would need fiber communication. Oh, and we do have fiber there. Bingo, those are good customers to call. So there are tools in intelligence to help you. It's not random, right? Very good.
Exactly. It's not random. Email blasting can be a little bit more random because we cast a wider net. But cold calling, because it takes more time, it's one at a time, very pointed. So you tend to do a little bit more research before you cold call somebody. And we have those intelligence tools like you talked about to kind of see if they'd be a good customer. Are they fiber lit? Do they have a need? We don't always know, but that's why you call and ask.
Ruth asks also, are you ever scared when cold calling that you get a grumpy grandpa on the other side?
I'm not only scared, Ruth, but it's happened all the time. It could be a grumpy grandma, a grumpy mom, but you know what? I think one of the biggest things, like I said, and the best things about sales is it teaches you to let things kind of flow off your shoulders like water. You realize to not take things personally. So I've gotten many grumpy grandpas, I've gotten many grumpy grandmas, but sometimes people are just taking out things that they're angry about in their own life, and then they just take it out on the first person they talk to, and that could be you. So just learning to not take it personally, because I honestly didn't do anything to him. I'm just here to see if he needs help, But if he's grumpy at me, then sometimes the best thing to do is just listen, say, empathize. If they have an issue with AT&T, sometimes I might even help them with it if I can. And there's been a couple times actually where you turn a grumpy grandpa into a customer because he's like, hey, this person listened to me, they helped me out, and then they may actually have a need that you can help me at the end.
Wow, that's such good demeanor and good emotional quotient experience. And I can see your skin's getting thicker and thicker, like Alina was telling us before. So it looks like a 3rd grader, Morgan, asked, what was the worst thing that happened during these cold calls?
Ooh, you guys are asking for all the juicy stories. Let's see. The worst thing that happened during these cold calls. I think the hardest thing is probably for me, the hardest thing personally is when somebody has an issue with one of their other AT&T accounts, like maybe their mobility account or something that I'm not even in that department, and they're just talking about it for an hour, a minute. They just are so angry at AT&T. I think that's probably the hardest thing because I'm not in that department. It's such a big company. But again, like I said, with sales, one of the things you learn is how to solve problems quickly. So that can be trying to find somebody, a connection I might have in the mobility department who can actually help them with that. And they may have a sale in the future, or it may just be customer care. But I think having the perspective of just generally trying to help them helps out a lot. I've had some funny situations though too, where there's a mom and her kids are talking in the background. She's like, excuse my kids. And then my dog started barking because I was working from home. I was like, excuse my dog. So, things happen, crazy things happen in the world of sales. But at the end of the day, it's about the connection that you make, making them feel important and cared for, and seeing if you can help them.
And you can see how Alina's 5P and SWOT especially her strengths, are playing out beautifully in her sales role, because she would be very intentional. That's the word you heard a lot from Alina when she introduced herself. And that's something we would encourage ourselves to learn. However you are and who you work with, be intentional, not just be blurry and not knowing what's happened. Truly be intentional and purposeful. That's another word for intentional. And most of all, I can see Alina really inviting God in all that she does. So that's very exciting. Pastor Lee, do you have any question for Alina? Or anyone else put in the chat?
Thank you very much for sharing, especially our young people who are interested in cold calling. Personally, that I sent my daughter to a phone sales for one summer in her college year, and the first week she cried and cried every time I went to pick her up. And but make the long story short, after the whole summer, she turned out to be the #1 seller, and so. And so she was very happy. She looked back, and now she's an orthopedic surgeon. She said it taught her everything that what she needed, especially how to take rejections, and how to, in the shortest time, trying to convey that you're caring, you're caring, or what you're saying is genuine. And so I would encourage everybody. Try that. Apply for something like that. But the other thing is, I find it personally interesting is when I get a cold call and I try to waste their time by saying how are you doing and all that stuff, and then I just won't see if I can prevent them from hanging up on me. So I'm reversing my tactic.
I would love if one of my customers asked me how I'm doing. Like when they ask me that, I'm like, you're not wasting my time. You're making my day. That makes me happy. But thanks for sharing that story, Pastor Lee. I think just that you had your daughter do cold calling and now she's an orthopedic surgeon, that just shows, again, you don't have to start in sales to end in sales. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but sales is just a great skill to have no matter what you want to do. Some of you said you love math or the video games, but either way, even if you're becoming an engineer, having good people skills, knowing how to do sales, or at least not be afraid of the cold calling experience, that really helps you a lot in any profession that you have. You don't, even if you're an engineer, you're working with people, or you have a boss, you're going to have coworkers. How do you deal with them? And even if you're not selling other products, you're selling your brand, as you do interviews, as you're moving along your job. So knowing how to do sales, what it means to portray a product or portray yourself or present things, it's a really important skill. So again, you don't have to going into sales to maybe do a summer internship in sales. And like I said, and like Pastor Lee was saying, you may cry the first day. I actually did have experience where I cried when I first started. But what really helps, again, is having good friends, good support in the process, or having, people that you can talk with about it, knowing that it's not personal, knowing that a lot of people go through it, and it's just the process of growing through it that's so important.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add a little bit. As Asian American, and none of us have a problem with English, but then when we convey or when we communicate with English-speaking people, that it somehow it really show up that you as minority, and then you don't have that self-confidence, and we feel that and so like Alina has said, you're not selling product. The most important thing, you're selling yourself. And if people think that you are, well, I don't want to use that word, but you're not genuine. You don't know how to present yourself. You're not bragging. You're not making yourself bigger than you are or better than you are. But we can't, or we don't. We're not very good at selling ourselves. So that's all.
So this is all the art of communication in an appropriate and a wise way, because all of us, like Alina said, we are always quote unquote selling something. whether it's an idea about your own personal brand in an appropriate and a biblical way. So sales is very much part of our life, our interaction with people. And the point is, what Alina shared here is mutually beneficial. It's not all about selling yourself and to benefit me, myself, and I. It's really how to be a blessing to other people.
Exactly. Thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, I think I should edit Alina's presentation for review, especially for Matthew. Matthew, that when you look at it, you need to be energetic and facial and smile and all that. It's all the finer thing of communication, but it's definitely the important part of it. Okay.
Definitely.
Matthew,
Alina, would you wrap up?
Yes, for sure. I'll wrap up. Last slide I had before the end. Just to kind of give, it's already 49, so I'll wrap up really quickly. So again, some challenges you may find is high stress in sales because you're often hitting a number. You may be tempted to compare with other people. And if you guys ever start sales, you'll experience that, you're comparing with your neighbor, comparing with, where you're at. But the biggest thing I think I learned is just compare with where you were yesterday. Are you learning better skills? Don't focus on that specific number. Don't just try to hit the number. Try to learn the skills that will get you there. Focus on the skills, focus on developing your character, your confidence, learning how to not take things personally, and learning how to keep moving quickly. Focusing on the right character bits and the right skills will help you get you there. Second thing, again, it can be hard because it's, like I said, a numbers game. I'm not going to lie, I do get stressed sometimes with numbers, but that was the biggest thing that I learned was trusting God with that. I can't always control if the customer is going to say yes or no. But like I said at the beginning, learning to trust God, praying through sales, it was amazing. Like I wanted to share more on this, but we'll have to share next time. But praying about sales even, or praying about my number when I was struggling a lot at the beginning, I had this big lesson change where I realized, it's God who's in control. I prayed about it that night. And the next day I started making my sales. It was a night and day difference. And the day before that, it was like a month. And that was my first time on the job. I was not making any sales. I was so stressed. That night I had prayed, and the day after sales are coming in, it was the heart posture transformation and God showing me it's not me who's in control. It's really God who's in control. And it's about my heart posture that matters. Another challenge could be like you said, sales, are they always telling the truth? Are they just trying to sell me something? I'll be honest, there have been a time or two where I actually lost out on a sale because I was honest with the customer and I told them, what other options that they had, and they decided to go with the cheaper option. So I didn't really sell the bigger product, but I knew that was better for the customer. And in the end, there's still people that I can keep in contact with, and there's one that actually came back to me for a sale in the future. So, maybe you will not always win out. Maybe they may not come back to you again for a sale, but at the end, if you're doing things the right way, I think that's what matters, is the way that you do things, the way that you get there. And then the rewards is your ability to help businesses, like Elaine and Pastor Lee was saying, is it's not just about how can I help myself, my number, but you're really trying to see how can I help these businesses. Great place to start and learn the business. And as we've been talking about quite a bit, develop skills that will help you throughout your career. All right. And then last slide, just to kind of show you guys where you can go. Many things, you guys can just read over this. So many ways you can go into from sales, especially if you're in a big company with a lot of room for moving around. One thing I actually want to go into is I might want to go into college recruiting. I didn't even list that on here. Oh, recruiting, so it's on there, or even event planning at the company. So I'm talking with different people about different pivots I can make, but sales is just a great place to start. With skills that can definitely take you through a lot of different places. So even if you're not thinking I want to be a salesperson until I'm 50 and retired, I really recommend, taking a summer internship or a couple months, just learn some of the skills, even especially if you're already good at the maths and the sciences. Some of the sales and communications can really help you become a more well-rounded person, especially if you do it in a way that's God glorifying and keep your character intact. Don't lose yourself in the process. All right. And that's all. Thank you so much, everyone.